Thank you for tuning in to another terrific tips or terrific tips for business. I'm Terry, your host, and you can't spell terrific without Terry. And today I'm so excited to have Patrysha with a Y on the show, and she is from Northern Alberta, Canada. How cool is that? I love being able to have conversations with people across the pond or more north or just around the world. It's a lot of fun. But Patrysha and I connected through, you guessed it, Facebook groups. Guys, if you're not on Facebook groups, you really need to get there. It's a great way to build new relationships. But she is a multi-passionate serial entrepreneur from Northern Alberta, and she just loves to share her knowledge and experience every chance she gets. Now you know why she's on the show. I'm so excited to have her here because her specialty is in campaign marketing on a beer budget. That's really cool. We love the bootstrapping budgets because that allows us to really tap into some interesting and creative methodologies and potentials. And she does this for her small town business owners and her unconventional professions, primarily through writing and coaching. She's also certified as a small business coach, facilitation, communication, and leadership. So she really is a very well-rounded person who's got a lot of knowledge because she's been doing this for over 20 years. So we're so excited to have her on the show because I know she's got a lot of great tips to share with us. Thanks for joining us today, Patrysha.
Thank you so much for having me. As you said, I love sharing. I just love being part of the marketing community, being able to help small business owners and unconventional professionals to actually achieve their dreams and to work towards success.
Yeah, absolutely. So why is that such a passion for you?
Well, for one thing, I have lived in small towns for many, many years. I lived, in the beginning in a city, but as I moved to the small towns, and honestly, it all began with my love for writing. And I started my very first home-based business 23 years ago. It was 23 years ago this July, and it was a home daycare. And I quickly realized that because of the restrictions, I could only have 6 children in my care maximum, including my own. So, there were only 5 slots available. Once those 5 slots are filled, your income is capped. And so that's when I started looking at other opportunities to make money from home. It was very important to me that I was there for my children, but I still needed an income. And so from that, I started writing. And my first foray into it was into freelance writing, like trying to write for magazines and, for different publications like that, the traditional route. And when it took 18 months from query letter to publication, and I was only 23 years old at the time. My patience has grown over the years, but back then it was like, no way, this is taking too long. And that's when I started writing directly for small business owners and nonprofit organizations. And back then it was things like doing websites and writing press releases and creating brochures and those sorts of writing activities that sort of led to the coaching and all the other things that I do today.
That's so cool. That's fun to kind of hear the succession. So did you end up like opening up a larger daycare facility, or did you just transition straight out of that at that point when you realized that income cap was so
I
quick?
actually, it was actually a longer transition, and I continued to provide childcare until we moved from the city. My eldest at that point was 2 years old. My new one was just a newborn. I now have three boys, and they are now 23, 20, and 17. So this is way back in the early years. I continued to provide childcare until we moved, and that's when I started transitioning into writing directly for small business owners. Once we got to a stable type place, because we moved a lot over those early years.
Awesome. And I love that you found a way to be resourceful. You had mentioned that early on you noticed that there was this time gap. So you really kept track of, okay, I've submitted this query, I've now submitted this, I've now submitted this, and it's taking me 18 months to get this like publicized. So that's very industrious of you to like pay attention to that timeline and then figure out a way to shorten that and be more resourceful. So what was something that you did to tap into that small business community kind of early on that's really kind of helped you continue to grow since then?
Well, as you go on about Facebook groups, back at that time was before Facebook. It was before, so there was a group called Rise. So this was a networking forum that was very similar to what Facebook groups does today in connecting to people throughout the world. And so I was a member of a couple of marketing and small business forums, and I got to meet the people through that online networking, and then also being in a small town. It was one of my very first local clients was actually the doctor who delivered my third baby.
Oh,
As he transitioned from being a general practitioner to being a a beauty practitioner. So he started getting into the Restylane and the Perlane injections and doing beauty type medical treatments. I helped to develop the website and the brochures as he was doing that transition. And he would, as we were living in a small town, his wife had a coffee shop in that town. They were like right next to, the clinic was right next to the coffee shop. And so then I started working with her as well on the promotions for that. And her location was actually the very first place I ever did a workshop, a learning workshop for small business owners.
awesome. Do you still do learning workshops now?
Absolutely. Well, not quite right now because with the pandemic and everything else, everything's been called off. I do online workshops and webinars on request, and I'm working towards having more of those. But yes, I still love, I mean, doing the face to face and the networking in the moment and learning. I love creating these workshops where the small business owners walk away with stuff they can actually apply in their business. Not so much on the inspirational end of things, but here are the tools, go use them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that leads me into a great question. But before I get there, I want to share. I love that our stories are so similar, even though we're in totally different parts of the country. Um, Down here in North Carolina, I got my start in the marketing space through a medical practice. I was their marketing director straight out of college. And as their marketing director, got exposed to all different types of ad agencies. And there was an agency that recruited me, and what ended up happening is I was like a reseller. It was like a multi level agency. And so I was a reseller of their product. But my very first client was a coffee shop that's still a coffee shop today, but it's changed ownership a couple of times. But it's funny how we remember our first ones. And it's funny how kind of we both started in the same space, the medical and then coffee shop space. So that's fun. But the question that I had, because you mentioned having those tools, having something tangible that those small business owners can do. So, is there a favorite tool or a favorite suite of tools that you love to recommend for small business owners when it comes to their marketing if they are trying to bootstrap it or do it themselves?
Well, my first stop is always with the copywriting because it costs nothing to learn how to write better. And no matter what you're spending your money on, whether it's Facebook ads, newspaper ads, radio ads, simply creating ads that are more effective is going to increase the impact of your marketing. So that's where I tend to start, is trying to make the most of the money you're already spending. And then going into ways that amplify your message, using public relations and social media to amplify, and going back to making sure that you are servicing your clients in such a way that makes them rave about you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the winning ticket right there for small business owners. right now during this pandemic where things are topsy-turvy, everything's really kind of upside down. I find that the small businesses that are winning right now are the ones who are really over servicing. They're really going out of their way to provide that value, to let their clients know that they matter and are really doing kind of that above and beyond extra step. Those guys are the ones that are really creating some raving fans that are going out and just spreading the word about them. So that's really helped the small business community, especially here in North Carolina. I imagine it's the same there in Alberta, Canada.
Absolutely. And within towns and communities, we tend to go to the people that we care about. There's that old saying, I am not sure who said it first, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And this pandemic has really provided an opportunity for those who are providing that experience, because honestly, I believe that the providing the experience, providing that top value is a winning combination even when there isn't a pandemic going on. We all know those shops who take us for granted. We shop there grudgingly because we have to, not because we want to. And I want to be the type of place that people are shopping because they want to shop with me, whether it is because I provide an experience or a transformation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. We do shop at some of those bigger box stores because the product that we're looking for doesn't exist in the smaller shop, but we would much rather shop at the smaller shop and support somebody that we know, our neighbor or our friend, than trying to go to that box store because it's just better. It's just better to keep it in the family. I always consider my community my family. I want to keep it in the family. Uh,
Absolutely. And reality is that there are some products that a small business owner simply can't compete on as far as price. We are only going to go so far in terms of what we're going to spend on the products that we need to get, those things that are not, and it all depends on what our priorities are. There's some people that won't spend a whole lot on soap, and there's some people who will spend a great deal on soap because it's important to them. But for those who are, it's a commodity and they don't really care, they're going to buy it at the big box store. They're not going to look for a boutique or a custom experience. But those who want the artisanal things, that's where the local business owners really surge to the forefront and where they can really make a difference in the community. Because the reality is, and I'm really huge on local shopping as much as possible, even with my clients, I said, use me for the strategy and find somebody local that can help you with it, because that's going to keep money within your community. I'm really huge on that. Hire for what you have to, but there are things, because the reality is when we spend at a local independent store, 48 to 53% of it stays within our community. When we shop at a locally owned franchise, it shrinks down to about 35% staying in our community. When we buy at a big box store that is corporately owned, that shrinks down to 17%.
wow.
And so the more that we can focus on shopping at those local independents, the more money our locally driven charities have, because it's been shown that a locally owned independent store is going to contribute more to those causes.
That's amazing. Those statistics are mind blowing. I had no idea that it was that drastic of a percent difference in terms of how much revenue actually stays inside the community when you shop local. So thank you for sharing that with me and with our audience, because I think that's really important. We hear the campaigns all the time, like Small Business Saturday and Shop Local, and we hear this stuff all the time, but I don't think we really take the time to really identify why that matters. And so I think the statistics really kind of put that into a perspective that you probably don't think about. It's more than just supporting your neighbor or your friend. It's about really supporting the community as a whole. So that's awesome.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it does support the community as a whole. And as mothers, most business owners tend to be mothers, and if we're not mothers, then we end up mothering our community, it sort of seems. And I don't like, I don't want to, say that only mothers or business owners or anything like that. But when it comes down to it, we've got kids in gymnastics, we've got kids in soccer, we've got kids at the Boys and Girls Club. Any of those things are local groups. A lot of their fundraising comes from them going to the business owners and those relationships. And that's where they do a lot of their fundraising. So when we contribute, it means they can, so it makes the whole community go around.
So since you're into the strategy space and so am I think we can have a little fun here. Do you, especially since you've been talking about this like community fundraising, do you in your strategies look for ways to partner up the for-profit business with nonprofits that are serving similar demographics so that they can really create a strong partnership together? Yeah.
Absolutely. Because that's one of the ways that you can also increase your public relations, like getting into the traditional media, your local newspapers, your local radio stations, and so on. That's one of those wonderful backdoor ways to get that coverage, because when we do good, we get coverage in a lot of cases when we highlight it and we say, hey, the dog park is being funded, and in our town it is, the dog park is being funded by purchases at the local pet store. So those kind of synergistic partnerships, not that I have anything to do with that particular one, it's just one that I happen to love the synergy through. And personally, because of my background, I put a lot of my charitable work towards Wellspring, which is our local domestic violence help center, and the community lunchbox, which helps ensures that no kid in our community goes hungry.
I love that. I'm so glad that you shared that strategy and that passion and part of your mission to help make that difference in your community. And I think that's beautiful. Spin Frogs focuses on supporting the oceans. So ocean conservation is a big thing for me. It's been a big thing for me since I was a child. I've always sponsored manatees or some ocean creature, frogs, turtles, all of the sea creatures. And that was a turning point for me as well. What brought me to Spin Frogs, what brought me to being in business again after being in corporate America was sitting in front of a big aquarium, looking at the sea life, just going about their day. And I was just in awe at the beauty of it. And so it just kind of comes full circle to kind of refocus in on ocean conservation, because when our oceans are clean, our air is clean. When our air is clean, our lungs are healthy. When our lungs are healthy, we can do so much more. We live a longer life with healthy, clean lungs. So it all kind of circles back around. While I'm not living in an ocean community, I do think the oceans play a big role in the community of the world. So that's why that's one of mine. So very cool.
Absolutely. That is awesome. I actually worked with a gentleman earlier, was it about 2 years ago? And it was all about the saving of the coral reefs in the world. And so he had a children's book that was all about helping to teach the children about the issues with and this was, I forget all the details, but I think that I will look that up and get you that information, because I think you'd love that particular book, because it is important. One of the taglines that I like to think is, think globally, act locally. Because there are
Yes.
things that we can do, like even if we live far away from the ocean, there's still things that we can do to help the ocean, even if it is just preventing things getting into it, and donating to causes that help to rebuild it, because it is our planet's lungs.
It is. It is. And I think like if we consider the rivers and the lakes near us, every town, every city across America has a river or a lake near them. And so consider the pollution factors that you're doing, because that contributes to what falls into those rivers and lakes, and that contributes to what gets dumped into the ocean. So if you're being mindful of your pollution, your recycling habits, your carbon footprint, all of those things play a role in how that affects our ocean. So I would love that book. That would be awesome. I would love to learn about that. And one of the things that breaks my heart the most is knowing that our coral reefs in Australia are not what they were. The Great Barrier Reef is just not, it's not coming through. It's not alive anymore from what I hear. So
Yeah,
that was always a dream.
It's a worldwide phenomenon because it is a living organism, but they are ways, and that's what's so hopeful about the things that are happening today, is that there are ways, and they are teaching how to help those areas, and they're doing little farming things. And I don't understand the science behind it. I just know that there are initiatives being through grassroots all over the world where people care and are coming together and are doing things to help.
That's so cool. That is so cool. So as a small business owner, as a small business marketing professional consultant, what's maybe some of the biggest challenges our small business community is facing right now?
Well, right now it's a lot of uncertainty. It is very stressful because we don't know what's coming next. And one of the things that I have said over and over again over the years, it's hard to make good decisions from a place of stress. So I think that one of the most important things that we can do as small business owners is to be addressing that, to be constantly aware of how much stress we're under so that we can make good decisions as we move forward. Because if we allow ourselves to get brought down into the depths of despair, it's really hard to, again, make those decisions in a wise way, because we make things from a knee-jerk reaction, or out of that scarcity mindset where, oh no, the sky is falling. Well, if you think the sky is falling, you're going to make different decisions than if you see light at the end of the tunnel. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that the biggest challenge right now is self-care.
Awesome. So do you have any, and I'm with you on that completely. I actually was just telling my husband, never negotiate from a place of weakness. And if you're in a negotiation pattern of that fear, or that uncertainty, or that scarcity space, you're negotiating from a place of weakness, and that never helps you. It burns you every time. So you don't want to negotiate from that place of weakness. You've got to make sure that you keep yourself clear from that stress. Do you have any tips or tools or habits that help you stay clear from stress?
Well, they don't always work. It's always a work in progress. But meditation, support groups, having the opportunity to speak honestly with other people that are in a similar position can really help, because it is difficult as small business owners to be honest with the whole world, because there is a level, especially in small towns, of leadership, and it can be hard to let the mask slip. So it's important to have those support groups where you can be fully yourself, and taking time for yourself uh, in a way that works for you. Some people like go to the spa. Some people just need a rock in the middle of the river. It varies. Some people need really loud music to, find their space of self-fulfillment. So it's going to vary, but find that thing and be doing it on a consistent basis. You got to fill that cup, so to speak.
Absolutely. We can't serve from overwhelm. We have to serve from overflow. And if we're not overflowing, we're not filling our cup. We have to go fill our cup. So awesome. So you're doing meditation type stuff. Is there a favorite? Do you like to do like silent meditation, or do you like guided meditation? What's kind of been your favorite source of meditation to help you?
Well, it really varies depending on where I am and where I am. I love guided meditations. I really have enjoyed the ones from Leonie Dawson. She had some really good ones on creativity and that sort of thing. But in a lot of cases, it is just flowing with whatever and trying to do some self meditation to ground myself in my own where I am and sorting it out. So it's a combination. It depends. Like some days, um, I need more of the tools than others. I actually have in my 30-day champagne marketing program an exercise where we write down things we have done well in the past that we can pull out when we're in a bad place so that we can go back and look at those accomplishments and remember that it wasn't always this way so that we can continue to move on to the future. Because one thing about business is that it is always an up and down. You're never going to be staying in that space. You might think that, oh, when I get to this space, it's all going to be perfect, but then you come with the different challenges. And so you constantly have to be reworking what you're doing.
Absolutely. I think you hit a really important key there is remembering the positives, remember the wins. So I was talking with one of my small groups recently, and I don't remember now if it was something I've shared on here or not, but talking about how you can take that win and visualize it and create a vision board of your successes. Because I know there are a lot of visual people out there. There are a lot of auditory people out there. I myself am a visual person. I need it to be in my face. So if I'm going through one of those really hard times, I need to see that win. Like, there's a success story. There's a success story. This is what you've done here. Because it's great to hear it when you hear it from your clients, but it's easy to forget it the very next second. So having them visual where you can see them to remind you, it does help you kind of pull right out of that doubtful space for sure.
Absolutely. And having that reminder that, yeah, I have done good things when you are in that space of doubt can be really helpful. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then always be moving and progressing forward. So when we're thinking about progressing forward, what does that look like? And how do we know if we're going in the right direction?
Well, those are interesting questions that we have to, I mean, really, it has to do because I believe that success is defined by you and not necessarily what the world thinks of your success. That can be very individual to every person. Some people want to be on Oprah, and some people just want to be able to do what they do and not be bothered with all the extras. And so it really does depend, like when you're trying to figure out it's so individual. I mean, that's where coaching comes in, that introspection and figuring it out for yourself, because we are not copies of anyone else on the planet if we are going to be successful. I have a personal success theory that I call the no, no, never theory. It's know yourself, know your market, never give up.
Ooh, I love that. Say it again.
So it's the no, no, never theory, which kind of sounds like a 2-year-old having a tantrum. That goes back to those preschool days when I was dealing with that. But it is actually know as in the KNOW. Know yourself, know your market, never give up. So it's no, no, never. And it really is about knowing yourself. Some of us, we have ideas for our business, but they don't actually fit who we want to be. We have these ideas because of, what's been put out into the world and, ideas we have. And then when we really get into doing what we do, we figure, oh, that's not how it works. And how do we adjust? But as we go through that, it's remembering yourself. If you are, there's some people that we're told, for example, that we should blog. But there's some people for whom that is really, really uncomfortable. Well, how can I get those results of blogging without having to do that particular thing, because there's 1,000 ways we can market our business. So knowing yourself, because if you're going to start a blog and you're going to drop it 3 weeks from now, because there's no point, right? So knowing yourself can save you a lot of time and energy. And then knowing your market, because some of the things that you might like to do, your market may not even be there. If your market's not on Pinterest, even though you love it to pieces and it's like where you spend all your time, if your market's not there, your time might be better spent elsewhere. So that's where the know your market comes in. And the never give up comes from the fact that we tend to give up right before we make the breakthrough. So it's important to push through some of the harder stages, with the caveat that it is okay to give up when you've given it your best shot. There are
So
some
kind of
things.
have like what that looks like in mind. Like if you've given it your best shot and you know what your best shot is and you've exhausted all of your options, then it's okay to consider that give up point, but don't give up until you've exhausted all of your options.
Exactly, because I do like I put that caveat on there simply because I have seen too many people over the years keep beating a dead horse, and keep on going past the point where, for whatever reason, it is just not going to work. And that doesn't mean necessarily giving up on the dream. It just means giving up on that particular avenue to that dream, because sometimes that particular thing that you're doing might not be where you're supposed to be on that next step. So you do have to kind of, that never, I hate saying the word never, is my problem there. I love it in the sense of no, never, but never is often a way we can get trapped.
Yeah. Well, it's an extreme. It's never and always are both extremes, and you do get trapped if you live in extremes, because you limit your options by doing that. And so it's better to kind of keep the options open. And my mom always used to say never, because you never know. And the moment that you
Mhm.
say never is exactly when it's going to happen. Um, in my experience, my mom tends to be right. So, but in this case, I think that extreme of never give up actually opens up the options instead of limiting the options, because
Yeah.
that it gives you the freedom to find that resource, be that resourceful person like you were when you were 23 years old, and you're like, this is like I'm hitting my head against a brick wall. I know I want to do this, but this isn't going to be the direction I need to go. I need to pivot and try something different to make this happen, because this obviously isn't it. And so that allowed you to be that resourceful person to find those other options, because you weren't going to give up. You knew you wanted to provide that support for those small businesses.
Right. And for me, it was like at the beginning, like as a kid, you said, oh, I'm going to grow up and be a writer. And it's not quite the same once you get into that. Like, one of my friends who is a prolific and wonderful writer and has won awards now, it took 10 finished manuscripts before her first manuscript was picked up. And now she has several and that sort of thing. But back then, that keep going at it, to keep writing, and to keep going until she hit that final point. I mean, that's the sort of thing that I mean by never give up. If you know that that's what you are meant to do, don't let the world tell you that you can't do that. With my particular case, I wasn't concerned about the method of writing. I didn't care whether I wrote fiction or nonfiction, or whether I was writing a movie script or a radio play. I didn't care what I was writing as long as I was writing. So I was lucky that way. I wasn't tied into anything. Oh, you need a press release written? Okay, no problem. Because for me, it was the joy of using words, as opposed to a particular end to a means.
It's amazing what can be conveyed through the words that we use.
So powerful, so powerful. And that's again going back to what we were talking about earlier, with copywriting being so important to small business owners. It is precisely because words have such impact, and changing just one word can increase results by like 30%, depending on what the words are and what you're using before. But you can honestly make huge increases with those little tiny changes, because it's nuance, and it's all about emotion and subconscious and all those things, but it all combines, and to the point where a word can make a huge difference.
So, do you, just out of curiosity, study any of the neuro linguistic programming stuff that exists out in the market space today?
I do. Like, I have studied it. A lot of it rubs me the wrong way. I am the type of person who takes what I like and leaves the rest. So I have looked into some of that stuff, but because of the dodgy behaviors of some people within the community, I don't consume it all. If I can say it that way, it is that there are some great things about it and some great information in it, but there are some bombs in there that can be dangerous.
You just got to watch out for the landmines. Those things get you.
Exactly. And that's how I feel about almost any sort of advice organization or school of thought, is that you have to watch out because there are extremes, and you want to stay away from those edges.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just realized what time it was. This has been such a delightful conversation, and the time has just flown by on us. So, share with us, if you don't mind, one of your favorite things that you've worked on. What's been like your favorite story to share about your work and the work that you've been able to do in your community?
Oh, wow. That is a tough one, because there have been a lot of wins over the years. I have to say, some of my best work was work that I did with the electrolysis in Alberta. I worked with an electrolysist here. And so, electrolysis, for those who don't know, is the ancient art of hair removal that is actually permanent. So it's a electrolysis with electricity and this sort of thing, and it's a old school way of removing hair, and it is permanent. So there's a lady that practiced that here. It's sort of gone by the wayside as the laser hair removal has gotten more popular. But this was a way that's been done since the time of Cleopatra. Like, it's a real old school type thing. In any case, I worked with them, and it was an amazing experience. One of my best ads ever. My funnest ad ever is one that I wrote at that time. And basically, it was a picture of a quite good looking man with the little bit of stubble going, and it said, "Hey ladies, only he can make stubble look sexy." Call to find out. So
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
so yeah, that was one of my favorite ones, because it was a real, like, every time one of the, because I originally wrote it for one, and then I gave them the opportunity to use it in their communities, because they were spread out through different communities, and every time they would run that one, they'd get leads from that ad, because it caught attention and did all the things that it was supposed to do.
Absolutely. Oh, that if we use a nice looking guy, it works every time. Sorry, guys.
Well, there's that, and the stubble, and it just worked with the messaging. Well, if they can use the women in their ads, right?
Right, exactly. That was so much fun. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, I guess the last question that I have for you today, because you provided such amazing value and insight for our small businesses, I know that the people listening to this are going to want to get in touch with you. So, what's going to be the best way for them to do that?
The easiest way is to just head over to patriciawithty.com. So that's patrysha.com. And you'll find everything I do there. It's all focused on champagne marketing on a beer budget for small town, small business owners and unconventional professionals. That's the niche I work in. If you are an online entrepreneur, I can definitely connect you with some of my friends, but that's not my expertise.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I so appreciate the time today. We've had an amazing conversation. I really hope that the audience who gets to watch this gets a chance to connect with you, follow you on social media, and engage with some of the work that you're doing, because it's definitely fun to see and experience. I guess my husband says good copywriting is invisible. And so being able to really experience what good copywriting can do for you, I think is a really key thing that most small business owners just don't pay attention to. But when it's bad copywriting, you pay attention to that. So see what good copywriting can do for you and make sure you connect with Miss Patrysha. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It has been a blast.
But likewise, I look forward to future conversations.